This should be very close to the lead story tonight because it's a statement about the failures of our country. 1 in 3 Australian parents are apparently struggling right now to pay the basic expenses of going to a public school. Now, that news website repeated a press release which came out from an organisation called Act for Kids, and I'm going to read from that now. Research from the National Child Protection Organisation, Act for Kids, has revealed almost 1 in 3 Australians, or 30%, are struggling to pay for their children's basic educational needs. This is things like uniforms, stationery, books, excursions and school fees. We're not talking about the elaborate private school fees. We're talking about the basic things that should be provided, but for some reason you have to pay for to access a system that already you or other members of your family have paid taxes to pay for. The Act for Kids survey of almost 1,000 Australian parents also found that a quarter, or more than a quarter, 27%, are finding it difficult to afford the internet at home. Now, for all the conversation about billions of dollars extra for the NBN, no conversations about it being cheaper or virtually free for people who are in this group. No conversation about that whatsoever. 40% of Aussies say they're battling to pay for extracurricular, you knew I'd fail that one, activities important to their child's social and physical well-being, sport, music, hobbies. Now, we have a Prime Minister who every single day is spending other people's money, often years down the track, never, fingers crossed, because the reality is that the budget is in structural deficit for the next 40 years, meaning that this government has put us in a place where the federal government will spend more than it earns, and it will get worse every year between now and 2060. That's how bad the scenario is going to be. Now, we know that by the years of 2040, 2050 and 2060, the Australian population, which is currently just under 30, will go past 30, past 40 and maybe even on its way towards 50. Double the number of people that are here now, 50 million people. Yet still the government promises to spend more than it earns. The only solution is to increase taxes, and already Australians pay too much tax, as I told you last night. The single greatest source of revenue for this federal government is not the GST, it is not petrol taxes, it is not cigarette taxes, it is not even company tax. It is personal income tax. Yet still, under all of that system, we are in a world of trouble. And we've got $5 million to beautify parts of Nowra. Again, beautiful city, and I'm not going to argue with what obviously has been ticked off as a good idea, but we know why that money is being announced at a prime ministerial level, and it's because it's a seat that if he loses, he gets one seat closer towards what seems to be an inevitable minority government. Or it could be the start of many dominoes to fall, meaning that the minority government won't be formed by the current Prime Minister, but by the alternative Prime Minister in Peter Dutton and the Liberal and National Party. But it is, to me, a disgrace that with all of the money that comes into government, more than ever before, and all of the money that goes out, which is more than ever before, we have a scenario where 1 in 3 parents, and that means kids, 1 in 3 kids, is living in a household that may not be able to pay for their school uniform. Think about how that process, which puts pressure on the start of your life, affects the next stage, the next stage, and the next stage of your life. The Act for Kids people were on with Chung Lei today here on Sky News.
So if we think about the kinds of things that we need to put into place to make sure kids do a great job at school, then parents are really worried about providing them this year. When parents are really stressed, it passes on to kids who are already a little bit anxious about going to school.
What I find despicable about Anthony Albanese and his government's priorities is that this is a government that, despite the fact that you have seen food lines around the block, 3 million people this close to homelessness, or 1 in 3 families struggling to pay for a school uniform, is that this government has spent more money advertising itself and its political programs than it has given extra funds to things like Food Bank, or the charities, which you may well see the ads on television or hear on the radio, where they want you to sponsor a child here in Australia. Now, I think those charity efforts are spectacular. I do not understand how this government that has billions of dollars for the promises that they want to make to win votes can't find millions of dollars to help the charity sector in Australia. In fact, they have spent $251, how's that, $250 billion since they became the government on government advertising. Government advertising that, of course, way back when was disgraceful, but now it's their turn. They're spending, again, other people's money. This time on hoping that you will fall for their garbage. The federal government spent $251 million on ads last year, according to the Financial Review, fueling criticism from integrity advocates about vote buying as advertising industry players predict a surge in taxpayer-funded campaigns before the election. Figures from the Department of Finance show that ad spending leapt 40% last financial year as the Albanese government outlaid millions of dollars to publicise things like too little too late tax cuts, Medicare urgent care clinics, despite the fact that the amount of people bulk billing is going down, and fee-free TAFE courses that are a great idea, but we are producing fewer apprentices than we were under the previous government.